Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a really specific feeling. It's a feeling I think everyone listening has had, but we don't always have a name for it.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. So you finish a book, maybe a really dense one, or the credits roll on a film that wasn't just, an action flick. The screen goes black, you close the cover, and you just sit there. You just stare at the wall.
Right, the stare at the wall moment. It is the universal reader's experience, really.
Exactly. And you aren't thinking about the plot anymore. You know the bad guy lost, or the ship sank, or the couple broke up. You know what happened. But there is this residue left in your brain, a lingering question that asks, okay, but what was the point of all that?
And that residue, that is actually the most important part of the consumption process. That is your brain trying to grapple with theme. And frankly, that is where most people get completely stuck.
Yeah, they really do.
They can recount the plot of a movie in, like, vivid detail, but if you ask them the theme, they freeze up.
It feels like a flashback to high school English, doesn't it?
Oh, totally.
The teacher standing at the chalkboard demanding to know the theme of The Great Gatsby. It feels, I don't know, academic. It feels dry.
Which is a tragedy because theme isn't academic at all. It's the engine. It is the difference between an anecdote you tell at a bar and a story that actually changes your life. Theme is the machinery that turns lies, which is all fiction really is, just made-up events, into the absolute truth about reality.
Using lies to tell the truth.
Exactly.
That is our mission statement for today's deep dive. We have a massive stack of sources to get through to prove this. We aren't just looking at one book today. We're looking at a whole spectrum of short stories that range from the terrifying to the completely bizarre.
Yeah, it's a huge stack.
We've got Stephen Crane, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Yasunari Kawabata, Junot Diaz, and Farhadi Mukherjee.
It's an incredibly eclectic mix. I mean, we are going to go from a shipwreck off the coast of Florida in the 1890s all the way to a punk rock rebellion in New Jersey in the 1980s.
Quite the jump.
Right, but the common thread, and the reason we stack these specific sources for you, is that they're all cross-cultural encounters in a way. And I don't just mean people from different countries meeting.
Right, you mean characters acting as translators of experience.
Yes.
Like translating between life and death, or the magical and the boring.
Exactly. They are trying to read the code of the world around them. And usually they fail, but watching them fail helps us understand how the machine works.
So before we throw everyone into the ocean with Stephen Crane, I think we need to do some quick housekeeping on definitions.
Good idea.
Because I think the reason people hate discussing theme is that they confuse it with topic.
They are constantly conflated, yeah.
Like if I ask someone what Romeo and Juliet is about, 9 times out of 10 they say, oh, it's about love.
And they are wrong. Love is the topic. It is the subject matter. A topic is almost always a single noun or a phrase. War, grief, growing up, corruption. You can identify the topic just by looking at the book jacket, but that doesn't tell you anything about the author's actual perspective.
So if love is the topic, the theme is what the story has to say about love.
Precisely. A theme must be a complete sentence. It is a proposition. It is an argument. So for Romeo and Juliet, the topic is love, but the theme might be impulsive, passionate love creates destruction when placed inside a rigid social structure.
Wow, okay. That is a lot heavier than just love.
It has to be. Let's look at one of the theoretical texts in our source stack today. Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Birthmark.
Oh, right. The story about the scientist, Aylmer. He has this beautiful wife, Georgiana, and she's perfect except for this small hand-shaped birthmark on her cheek.
Right.
And he just becomes utterly obsessed with removing it. He creates a potion, she drinks it, the birthmark fades, and then she dies.
A classic. Now, a bad reader says the theme is perfectionism.
Which is just a topic.
Exactly. No, that's the topic. A slightly better reader says the theme is that Aylmer was a jerk.
Also true, but that's just plot summary.
So a true thematic statement needs to generalize it to the human condition.
Yes.
Something like, in the pursuit of the perfect, we inevitably destroy the good.
Exactly. We destroy the good by seeking the perfect. That is a specific insight into human behavior that applies to plastic surgery or software engineering or parenting. It lifts the story out of the 19th century and drops it right into your lap today.
I love that. And this distinction brings me to the other big trap, which I think is actually even more common. We want stories to be instructions.
We really do.
We want a moral. So is a theme the same thing as a moral?
Emphatically no. And this is hard for us because we are all raised on fables. We are raised on The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Right.
And the theme of that story is a moral. It's Don't lie, or people won't believe you when it really matters. It is prescriptive. It tells you how to behave.
It's a command. Brush your teeth. Look both ways before you cross the street. Right. But adult literature, and certainly the literary fiction we are diving into today, is almost never prescriptive. It is descriptive. It doesn't tell you how the world ought to be. It observes how the world actually is.
So when we read, we shouldn't be asking, what is this story teaching me to do? We should be asking, what is this story revealing about us?
And often, that reveal is uncomfortable. If a story shows a corrupt politician winning an election and retiring to a private island, the theme isn't, you should be corrupt.
Yeah, that would be terrible advice.
Exactly. The theme is, in our current systems, corruption is often rewarded over virtue. It's a mirror, not a sermon.
But the sources do mention one card out for this, which they call the Aesop exception.
Yes, fables. They're the only genre where the theme is explicitly stated, usually in bold text right at the very end. But even there, our source material encourages us to look closer. Did you read the example of the two crab?
I did. It's super short. A mother crab sees her child walking sideways and scolds him. She says, "Why are you walking so crooked? Walk straight." And the young crab says, "Okay, mother, show me how."
Right. And so the mother tries to walk straight to demonstrate, but she can't. She just falls over.
And the explicit moral is printed right there. Example is the best precept. Or, practice what you preach.
Which seems pretty open and shut. Just don't be a hypocrite.
On the surface, yes.
Yeah.
But if we apply the deep dive logic to it, think about the actual biology of a crab.
Well, they're anatomically incapable of walking straight. Their legs are hinged to move laterally.
Exactly. So the mother isn't just a hypocrite. She is delusional. She is asking her child to defy nature. She is projecting a desire for straightness, maybe because she sees how other animals walk onto a body that literally cannot perform it.
Oh, wow. So the deeper theme, the descriptive theme, is about how parents often demand the impossible from their children because they're uncomfortable with their own nature.
Precisely. Even a 4-sentence fable has layers if you stop looking for the lesson and start looking for the truth.
That is a perfect transition to our first major story, because we are moving from crabs to the ocean itself. Let's talk about Stephen Crane and the open boat. This is a heavyweight champion of short fiction. And the context is so vital here. Stephen Crane was a journalist. In 1897, he was on a ship called the Commodore running munitions to Cuba.
And it sank.
It sank. Crane spent 30 hours in a 10-foot dinghy in high seas.
30 hours in a 10-foot boat. So when we read the descriptions of the water, the cold, the sheer exhaustion, this isn't imagination, this is reportage.
It is a tale intended to be after the fact, as the subtitle says. The story places 4 men in a bathtub-sized boat. You have the captain, who is injured, the cook, who is just bailing water constantly, the correspondent, who is Crane's stand-in, and the oiler, a man named Billy.
The atmosphere is just so claustrophobic despite being out in the open ocean. The waves are described as slate and barbarous. But what strikes me is the initial attitude of the men. They seem offended.
That is the perfect word. They are deeply offended. The correspondent has this recurring internal monologue. He thinks, if I am going to be drowned, why, in the name of the 7 mad gods who rule the sea, was I allowed to come thus far?
The 7 mad gods. It implies a conspiracy, like someone is out to get them specifically.
It implies that the universe has a personality. He feels that drowning him now would be a crime. He says it would be an abominable injustice to drag his nose under the water just as he was about to nibble the sacred cheese of life.
Nibble the sacred cheese of life. It's such a bizarre, petty image. It reduces all of existence to a snack he feels entitled to.
It's the ego screaming. At this stage, the theme is man versus hostile nature. They believe the ocean is actively trying to kill them. They believe the wind is shouting at them. But as the hours drag on and they row toward the Florida coast, something shifts.
Right, they see a specific object on the shore, a wind tower.
A windmill or a watchtower, yeah.
Yeah.
And the correspondent just stares at it. He realizes it's just standing there. It isn't waving. It isn't sending a signal. It's just a structure. And that triggers the big epiphany.
The shift from hostile nature to indifferent nature.
Correct. He realizes that the tower, and by extension the entire universe, is not cruel. It is not beneficent. It is not treacherous. It is flatly indifferent.
Wow.
The ocean doesn't hate them. The ocean is just water obeying physics. If they drown, it isn't a tragedy for the cosmos. It's just a displacement of liquid.
That is infinitely more terrifying than a mad god. You can bargain with a mad god, you can't bargain with physics. But this realization leads to the second major theme, which is the brotherhood.
Yes. Once you realize the universe doesn't care about you, the only thing you have is the person sitting next to you. Crane writes that a subtle brotherhood was established on the seas. No one mentioned it, but it was there.
The correspondent, who is a pretty cynical guy normally, says it was the best experience of his life. Which is insane. He's freezing, he's wet, and he's terrified. But the connection is that strong.
It suggests that human connection is a defense mechanism against cosmic indifference. But, and this is why Crane is an absolute master, he doesn't let us keep that warm, fuzzy feeling. He shatters the moral expectation right at the end.
We have to talk about Billy, the oiler.
Right. If this were a Hollywood movie, who survives?
Billy survives. He is the strongest. He is steering the boat. He's doing the double shift on the oars. He is the one giving 110%. The cook is out of shape. The captain is hurt. The correspondent is an intellectual. Billy is the hero.
And in a moral universe, a prescriptive universe, hard work is rewarded with survival. But in the descriptive universe of the story,
Billy dies.
the boat swamps. They all swim for the beach. The captain clings to the keel. The cook floats on a lifebelt. The correspondent gets washed in by a freak wave. But Billy, they find him face down in the shallows, a still and dripping shape.
It feels like a gut punch when you read it. It feels wrong.
It feels wrong because we are conditioned to believe in meritocracy. Crane is showing us that nature doesn't check your resume. The strongest man died. Why? Maybe he was tired from working so hard. Maybe he just caught a bad current. It was completely arbitrary.
That is the truth told by the lie, the arbitrariness of survival. But the story ends with the survivors hearing the great sea's voice at night, and they feel they can now be interpreters.
That is the key word. Interpreters. They have crossed the veil. They know the secret, that the universe is indifferent and death is arbitrary. That separates them from the people on the beach who still believe in safety. They possess a dark knowledge now.
They are translators of the void. Okay, let's pivot. We've looked at the indifference of nature. Now let's look at how we handle the miraculous. Gabriel Garcia Marquez and a very old man with enormous wings.
A major shift in tone, but a very similar thematic question. Crane asks, how do we interpret the ocean? Marquez asks, how do we interpret a miracle?
And the answer seems to be very badly.
Extremely badly. The premise is magical realism 101. A man with wings crashes into a courtyard during a rainstorm.
But we have to be really specific about the visual here. This isn't a majestic angel from a Renaissance painting or a greeting card. He is described as a rag picker. He's bald, toothless, and his wings are strewn with parasites. He smells terrible.
He is a huge, decrepit hen. And this aesthetic failure is the source of all the conflict. The family Pelayo and Elisenda, they don't worship him. They think he's a castaway. A neighbor has to come over and tell them, no, that's an angel.
And their reaction to having a literal angel in their backyard is to lock him in the chicken coop?
They domesticate the sacred. They treat him like poultry. And then the capitalist instinct kicks in. They realize people want to see him, so they fence in the yard and charge 5 cents admission.
It becomes a circus. And the crowd is awful to him. They throw fruit peels at him. They pull his feathers. They even brand him with a steer iron to see if he's alive. It's a study in human cruelty, but it's driven by disappointment. He isn't doing angel stuff.
Right. He is too human. He has too much human truth, as the story says. He smells. He gets sick. We want our miracles to be pristine and powerful. When the sacred appears as something dirty and weak, we reject it. We just can't interpret it.
Even the church fails to interpret him. Father Gonzaga, the local priest, is suspicious because the angel doesn't speak Latin.
Which is such a brilliant jab by Marquez. The idea that the language of God must be the language of the Roman bureaucracy. The church writes letters to the bishop, then the primate, then the pope, just stalling for a decision. They are paralyzed by their own protocol.
But the part that really hammers the theme home for me is the Spider-Woman. The angel gets some competition.
This is crucial. The crowd eventually gets bored of the angel. He just sits there.
Yeah.
So they flock to a new traveling show, a woman who is turned into a tarantula the size of a ram, but with the head of a maiden.
Which, objectively, is way more horrifying. Why do they prefer the Spider-Woman?
Because she answers their questions. She talks to them. She tells them her story. She disobeyed her parents by going to a dance without permission, and a lightning bolt turned her into a spider.
It has a moral.
Exactly. It has a clear, prescriptive moral. Disobey parents equals become spider. The crowd loves that. It affirms their worldview. It's simple. The angel offers no moral. He is ambiguous. He is silent.
So the theme is that humans will choose a horrific but understandable lie over a confusing, ambiguous truth. We prefer the Spider-Woman because she makes sense. The angel is he's just there.
And when the angel finally recovers and flies away at the end, Elisenda isn't sad. She isn't awestruck. She is relieved. He is no longer an annoyance in her life, just a dot on the horizon. We miss the miracle because it's inconvenient.
To the inconvenience of the sacred. That's a really powerful idea. And it links nicely to our next story, which is also about missing the point, but in a much more delicate way. Yasunari Kawabata's The Grasshopper and the Bell Cricket.
We are leaving the mud of the chicken coop and going to a Japanese school playground at night. The mood here is quiet. It's observational.
The narrator is just watching these children hunt for insects, but the central image is the lanterns.
Yes, the narrator obsesses over these lanterns. There are the store-bought ones, red, mass-produced, practical, he calls them tasteless. And then there are the handmade ones. The kids cut shapes out of colored paper and cartons. They pour their hearts and minds into them.
It sets up this value system right away. Individual creativity versus mass production. But the story focuses on a very specific moment between a boy, Fujio, and a girl, Kyoko.
Right, so Fudio is hunting in a bush.
Yeah.
He asks, does anyone want a grasshopper? A bunch of kids run over, but he waits. He is looking for Kyoko. When she says, I want it, he gives it to her.
And then she looks in the cage and gasps. She says, it's not a grasshopper, it's a bell cricket.
And in this cultural context, bell crickets are rare. They're the prize.
Hmm.
So Fujio is suddenly a hero. He gave her a treasure. But the narrator sees something that neither of the children notice.
The trick of the light.
Yes. Fujio's lantern has his name cut out of it. When he holds it up to the insect cage to help Kyoko see, the green light projects his name, Fudio, right onto her breast.
And her lantern projects her name, Kyoko, in red light onto his waist.
It's a beautiful accidental branding. They're illuminating each other with their names. It symbolizes a profound connection, maybe love, maybe destiny. But they were just staring at the bug.
They completely miss the projection because they're so focused on the object.
That is the tragedy of the story. The bell cricket isn't the insect. The bell cricket is the moment of connection. But they treat the insect as the prize.
And then the narrator pivots. He addresses Fujio directly, imagining him as an adult. And this part feels like a warning.
It is a warning. It's a warning about perception. He tells Fujio that even if he has the wit to find a bell cricket in a bush, the world doesn't have many of them. He warns that as he grows up, his heart will become clouded and wounded.
He says you will overlook a true bell cricket, meaning you will meet a person who is rare and special, but you'll think they're just a common grasshopper.
Or the reverse. You will project your desires onto a common grasshopper and think they are a bell cricket.
Wait, that connects right back to the crab mother,
Yeah.
projecting what we want to see onto reality.
Exactly. Adulthood creates a callousness. We lose the ability to see the light, the projection, the soul. We only see the surface. The theme is about the fragility of perception and how we trade wonder for categorization as we age.
We're trading wonder for jadedness, which brings us crashing into our next story. From delicate Japanese lanterns to the gritty streets of New Jersey, Wildwood by Junot Diaz.
This is a tonal whiplash, but in the best way possible. The voice is just undeniable. We have Lola, a Dominican-American teenager in Paterson, New Jersey. She is a punk. She loves Susie and the Banshees. She wears all black.
And she is in a literal death match with her mother, Belisha.
Belisha is a force of nature, the ultimate old-world mother. Tall, physically abusive, demanding absolute submission. She equates love with ownership. I own you so I can hit you.
The story starts with a body horror element, really. Lola finds a lump in her mother's breast.
And notice Lola's reaction here. She doesn't cry. She feels a witchy sensation. She says, change, change, change. The mother's mortality is the crack in the armor that Lola needs to start her rebellion.
And the rebellion is fierce. She shaves her head. She goes for the full black-yellow look.
Which is a direct assault on her mother's vanity and cultural values. The mother tries to force a wig on her. There is that intense scene in the bathroom. Belisha says, you will wear this. Lola takes the wig, throws it in the sink, and sets it on fire.
The smell of the burning synthetic hair, it's so visceral. It's the ultimate no.
So Lola runs away. She goes to Wildwood, New Jersey with a boyfriend. She thinks she is escaping freedom. She thinks she is the hero of her own story now.
But Wildwood is a dump. It's freezing. She lives in a room that smells like kitty litter. Her boyfriend's dad is a racist who mocks her right to her face. He says something awful about a Cadillac.
Yeah, it's a brutal reality check. Lola realizes that running away is not a plan. It's just a reaction. She traded a prison of control of her mother for a prison of neglect and squalor. But she has way too much pride to go back.
Until she breaks. She calls her brother for help, for money or supplies, and the family descends on her. The ambush.
This is the climax. Lola sees the car pull up. She's a track star. She starts running. She knows she can outrun them. She can disappear into the boardwalk. But then she looks back.
Why? Why does she look back? She had her escape.
Because the bond of blood is stronger than the desire for freedom. She sees her mother on the ground. Felicia has lost her wig. She is bald from the chemo. She is crying. She looks weak.
So Lola stops. Her empathy kicks in. She goes back to help the mother up.
And it's a trap.
The mother grabs her. Diaz writes, her smile was like a lion's. And she says, "Ya te tengo. Now I've got you."
It is terrifying. The vulnerability was real, but it was also a weapon. The mother uses her own weakness to recapture the daughter.
So Lola is exiled, sent to the Dominican Republic to live with her grandmother. But this is where the theme expands. It stops being just a mother-daughter conflict and becomes a generational trauma story.
In Santo Domingo, Lola starts to change. She joins track team. She grows her hair out. But her grandmother, La Inca, tells her the truth about Felicia.
The mother didn't run away to America. She was sent away.
To save her life. Felicia was a wild rebel in her youth, too. She crossed the wrong people during the dictatorship. She was almost killed.
So Lola realizes that the wildness she feels, the punk rock, the anger, isn't just hers, it's her inheritance. She is literally reenacting her mother's life.
The theme is cyclicality. You cannot run away from your history because it is in your DNA. You are your mother's daughter, whether you like it or not.
Lola becomes an interpreter of her mother. She has to live her mother's life to actually understand her.
Exactly. It's never the changes we want that change everything, as the story says. She wanted to change her location. Instead, she changed her understanding of her lineage. She's waiting to begin, knowing the pattern isn't over.
Speaking of interpreting trauma and the clash of worldviews, we have one final story. The Management of Grief by Harati Mukherjee.
This is a heavy one. The context is the 1985 Air India bombing. A plane explodes off the coast of Ireland. 329 people die, most of them Indo-Canadians.
The narrator, Sheila Pava, loses her entire family, her husband, 2 sons, just gone.
The story contrasts 2 ways of grieving. You have the old-world communal grief neighbors screaming, fainting, needing to be sedated. It is loud and shared.
And then you have Sheila. She is deadeningly quiet. She is calm. She hears her family's voices like headphones in her ears. She is functioning, but she is completely detached from reality.
Enter the antagonist, Judith Templeton.
A government appointee. A social worker. She wears a crisp suit. She carries a leather briefcase. She represents the Canadian government's attempt to help.
But help to Judith Templeton means paperwork. It means acceptance. It means moving through the stages of grief so you can become a productive citizen again. She wants Sheila to be a liaison to the other families.
There is a scene that defines the conflict so well. They visit a Sikh couple who are hopeful that their sons might still be alive because the bodies haven't been found. Judith is frustrated. She tells Sheila they still think their sons are alive. We need to help them accept it.
Judith sees their hope as a social work problem. She sees it as a delusion that needs to be corrected so the file can be closed. Sheila sees it as a survival mechanism.
Sheila realizes you're asking me to break them.
That is the line. The theme is the inadequacy of systems to handle human pain. You cannot put grief in a briefcase. You cannot manage it like a project. Judith Templeton isn't evil. She is just woefully ill-equipped to interpret the cultural and spiritual reality of these people.
She is trying to use a Western bureaucratic ruler to measure an Eastern spiritual tragedy. It just doesn't fit.
Sheila eventually drifts away from Judith. She realizes she has to grieve on her own terms. She drops a package into the ocean for her family. She listens to the voices. She accepts the mystery.
It's a total rejection of the management.
Precisely.
So we have covered a lot of ground today. We've been shipwrecked, we've branded an angel, we've chased crickets, we've burned a wig, and we've fought the government.
It is a really dense stack.
But if we look at the whole picture, if we try to find the theme of themes for this deep dive, what is it?
It's interpretation. Every single one of these characters is struggling to read the text of their lives.
Right.
In the open boat, they try to interpret the ocean. Is it mad? Is it cruel? No, it's indifferent. In A Very Old Man, the crowd tries to interpret the angel. Is he a saint? Is he a fake? They fail because they use the wrong dictionary.
In The Grasshopper, the narrator interprets the light that the characters completely miss.
In Wildwood, Lola has to interpret her mother's cruelty to understand her own wildness. And in Management of Grief, Sheila interprets her loss against a world that just wants to codify it.
We are all just trying to read the signs, and usually we get it wrong.
We project. We project our fears like the mad gods or our desires like the bell cricket or our bureaucracy like Judith Templeton right onto the world.
And I guess that is why we read fiction. Not to learn a moral, not to be told to walk straight.
No. We read fiction to train ourselves to look for the second interpretation, to realize that the crab can't walk straight, to realize the ocean doesn't hate us, to realize that the scary mother was once a scared daughter.
It forces us to decode the world with a little more nuance.
And a little more empathy.
So here is the final provocative thought I want to leave you with. We talked about how Shayla had to reject the management of her grief and how the crowd rejected the ambiguous angel for the clear-cut Spider-Woman.
Right.
Ask yourself, in your own life, right now, are you looking for the Spider-Woman? Are you looking for the easy answer, the clear moral, the do this and get that?
Or are you brave enough to sit in the dinghy, look at the indifferent tower, and say, okay, the universe doesn't care, but I'm here with my friends, and that's enough.
Stop looking for the lesson. Stop trying to manage the plot. Look for the reveal.
And if you see a grasshopper, check the light. It might be a bell cricket.
Keep diving. We'll see you next time.